Europe today is in the middle of the largest economic, social and political crisis since the Second World War. Last week its leaders met and once again failed to show the ambition or urgency which is so badly needed. No significant step forward was taken on a single matter. The final communiqué is a long repetition of things which have been said before, with a number of small exceptions. And these exceptions represent areas where there have actually been steps backwards. The Taoiseach for this summit has been followed by near panic as the ongoing strategy of overspinning everything and failing to undertake serious negotiations threatened to completely undo Ireland's interests. The rearguard action of recent days has done nothing to challenge the basic fact that the supposed campaign for debt relief for Ireland has been nothing of the sort. Thankfully, the Taoiseach has finally put aside his partisan obsessions and been willing to state publicly what he has rejected before. Ireland incurred significant debts solely because of the lack of EU policies and because it showed solidarity with the rest of Europe. The Taoiseach stated on Monday, Ireland was the first and only country which had a European position imposed upon it in the sense that there wasn't the opportunity, if the government so wished, to do it their way by burning bondholders, unquote. The Taoiseach is absolutely right in this, and it's a great pity he has taken over a year and a half before saying it. Who knows how much he has previously set back our case by his unwillingness to admit this. In spite of all your spin, Taoiseach, the truth has become obvious that a policy of sitting on the sidelines and hoping that something will turn up is not a campaign. Failing to talk to people before summits is not a campaign. Failing to even state your specific negotiating objective is not a campaign. The Taoiseach has said that the summit agreed to fully implement the deal agreed in June. In fact, the summit stepped back from the June deal. He, of course, hasn't outlined in any specific way what that deal is, because he doesn't know. There is no agreement between member states as to what exactly the June deal means. It was important and full of general commitments to actions which are badly needed, but nearly every element of the specifics remains unagreed. And that is why there have been months of confusion. And I think it's rich, Taoiseach, to blame the opposition for last Thursday, Friday and the weekend. It was Angela Merkel's comments after the summit that created huge doubt. But, no, sorry, no, she has never clarified. I'm trying to, but the Taoiseach raised this issue. The Taoiseach asked in his contribution that members of the opposition would withdraw whatever comments they made. I was actually very reasonable on the Thursday and on the Friday in relation to Angela Merkel, as I sought clarification. But of course, it was her officials confirmed that her comments apply to Ireland. And nothing she has said since in any way contradicts that. She has not said her comments in the aftermath of the summit didn't apply to Ireland. Because those countries, Germany, Holland and Finland, have a fundamental problem with the ESM retroactively or retrospectively financing debt. That's just a reality. They have a fundamental problem with it. Now, if I could... Possibly. Who knows? But before going into the detail of what Ireland should be looking for, we should note that it is factually untrue for the Taoiseach to say that the June deal has been reaffirmed in full. It has not. The summit conclusions involved two significant dilutions of the June deal. In June, it was agreed that the new supervisory regime for banks would be in place by January the 1st next year. Last week, it was only agreed that a legislative framework would be agreed by January the 1st, and that implementation would happen through next year. Because it was also reiterated that there will be no ESM money available for bank debts until the new system is fully up and running, it represents a significant delay, Taoiseach, on even the possibility of the ESM funding Spanish and Irish bank debt. Now, this could have a very significant impact on the costs faced by Ireland when we fully return to the sovereign debt market. The Taoiseach should not come in here and pretend that everything is on track. It is not. And implementation of the deal has been delayed by up to a year. The summit also stepped back on the issue of a common bank resolution regime and deposit insurance. These are essential if banks in all parts of the Union are to see a restoration of confidence and to rebuild bank lending. In June, it was understood that a common regime was to be proposed, but last week this was reduced to merely harmonisation of national policies. This is a major step backwards from one of the most important parts of a banking union. When Chancellor Merkel gave a press conference saying that historical bank debt would not be covered by the ESM, she was fully entitled to say that as her understanding of the deal, because that deal in itself is so vague. Nothing in Sunday's rushed statement has seen her or Germany back off her basic statement. We know that they like and they admire Ireland. We know that. We know that they recognise us as in a unique situation. We know that Mr. Sherwood will come here on Monday and will say nice, pleasant things about us. What we don't know is what Germany and other countries will agree in terms of the contents of the banking union or the ESM. In June, it was agreed that something should be done. And since then, the deadline for doing something has been moved back, and we are no wiser as to what exactly that something is. Too much damage has been done over recent years by leaders systematically exaggerating their agreements. It needs to stop, and a good start would be Taoiseach putting aside the empty formulas and casual overclaims which fill his statements on Europe and start being open. Since it became obvious last July that you're reluctant to engage in the sort of diplomatic activity undertaken by other prime ministers or your predecessors down the years, and I've been tackling you in this. So day after day you came in here to say that everything was fine and was being left to others. Well, last week it's clear that we saw the outcome of that approach. German briefing that they would not be accountable for your government's spin, and the Germans briefed that last week, and clear evidence that a solid core was not engaging with Ireland's case. The Taoiseach then went out to tell us that he was certain the game had been changed in June, even though he left the meeting early and wasn't involved in the deal. Then, in a final show of the government's attempt to shore up its flanks, Minister Rabbit was sent out to do what he does best: attack everyone else. The briefings after Sunday's phone call and Monday's 45 minutes in Paris have been typically euphoric. Advisers have been doing the rounds, talking about a great victory, about incredible personal chemistry, and about games being changed once again. Given the history of massive overclaim about every small diplomatic encounter, there is no reason to believe any of this until the Taoiseach is honest enough to state what he has actually asked for. The basic point is that Ireland is seeking the assistance of the European Union in order to make its debts more sustainable. What does the government believe that this means? What is its definition of debt sustainability? Surely this should be at the centre of every financial plan, at the centre of every budget measure. Over the last year and a half, the Taoiseach has delivered many speeches, praising himself for turning around everything and delivering us on the fast track to sorting everything out. Unless the Taoiseach has been telling us untruths during question time and statements, this has been his message at every summit and every meeting with a foreign leader. European leaders hearing this would surely be forgiven for thinking that our government believes that debt is sustainable as it's currently structured. Remember, what is being discussed is sustainability, not simply making things easier. There have been a series of contradictory statements from the government over the last year and a half as to what its core objectives are. Minister Noonan originally said that the main concern was the interest rate on the promissory note. When it was pointed out that this was returned to the government through the central bank, he moved on and announced in Washington that he would be burning lots more bondholders. And then we were told that it wasn't the bondholders that mattered, but the interest rate on EU loans. When we got a reduction of 4 times what we were asking for as a result of Greece's requirements, the government announced victory and returned talking about the promissory notes. The much heralded technical paper, do you remember that, Taoiseach? The technical paper never appeared, and briefings stopped on our supposed promissory notes campaign. Then in June, Spain and Italy refused to let a summit finish without a deal on their funding needs. Ireland had done so little preparation and expected so little that the Taoiseach went home early. The statement that our debt sustainability would be looked at and we would be treated equally was and remains welcome. What was and remains a major error was the failure to do the advance work to get an understanding of what that meant. In the case of Spain, it is clear what they want. They want the ESM to recapitalise its banks, to an amount of over 50 billion euros and to take the associated risk. And that is known to everyone. In the case of Italy, it's also clear what they want. They want the ESM to be open to purchasing its sovereign bonds in order to reduce interest rates. That is known to everyone. What is Ireland looking for? Our situation is different from Spain's, not just because, as the Taoiseach finally admitted on Monday, and it is worth repeating again because of how significant it was, and I quote, Ireland was the first and only country which had a European position imposed upon it in the sense that there wasn't the opportunity, if the government so wished, to do it their way by burning bondholders, unquote. First time you've put that on the record. Are we looking for the ESM to buy our stakes in AIB and the Bank of Ireland? Are we looking for the ESM to finance our repayment of the promissory notes? Are we looking at all parts of bank-related debt or just the bank shares? What is the government's definition of sustainability? Unlike Spain, we are not looking for extra capital to be put into our banks. They have enough capital. They've been recapitalised. It's arguable that they're perhaps amongst the best capitalised in the international system because of the state's investment. The book value of the state's capital in the banks is just over 29 billion. The ESM purchasing this from us would be done only at current market prices. Given that the investment is booked as an asset in our net debt figures, selling it would either have no impact on our net debt or it would make it worse by forcing us to book a loss at close to the bottom of the market. Money saved in interest payments might be significant, but there's no indication whatsoever how much is involved or the technicalities of this. Unlike the Spanish government, our government has failed to provide even the most basic information on what is being discussed or its implications. In relation to the promissory notes, it's my understanding that at a minimum those countries involved in the Helsinki Statement believe that this is a matter purely between Ireland and the European Central Bank. They do not believe it is a legitimate use of the ESM, and they do not believe that there is any legitimate expectation on this front contained in June's deal. On a number of occasions recently, the Taoiseach has deliberately misquoted me in exchanges here. He has done so again with his claim that I said that it would be easy to get the ECB to restructure the promissory note. And he said that yesterday. The record shows I said nothing of the sort. I have. No. You have an awful habit, Taoiseach, of deliberately misleading what other people say. What I said was that they could be restructured easily if the ECB agreed. If the ECB agreed, which is a 100% factually accurate statement. The fact that Mario Draghi and others are opposed to the restructuring is clear. What is not clear is what the government's strategy for dealing with it is. When the 2012 promissory payment was converted into a sovereign bond financed by the Bank of Ireland, the government claimed it was a huge step forward. It was nothing of the sort. It converted a note whose interest was returned to the state into a long-term bond requiring interest payments. Ireland does not want the ESM involved in refinancing the promissory notes. It wants the terms of the notes, at the very least, extended significantly. In light of what even the Taoiseach now admits were the unique circumstances faced by Ireland, which obliged the creation of the promissory notes, significant relief from these payments is the minimum we should be demanding. The summit's other conclusions contain a long list of items which add up to very little progress. In relation to the future of the Economic and Monetary Union, there will be a negotiating framework agreed in December, by which time the Taoiseach will hopefully finally have outlined what Ireland's position is for the future of EMU. In talking about measures to encourage growth, the summit produced a lot of high talk but little substance. None of the measures involved allow a stimulus which is in any way in proportion to the crisis being faced in many parts of the Union today. In relation to the European Investment Bank, the expansion of its capital base is welcome. The fact that much of the potential new lending will go directly onto countries' debt figures means it's of limited potential benefit. However, it would be good if the Taoiseach and Minister for Finance would outline what Ireland is proposing to do in order to benefit from a share of the potential 60 billion in extra investment over the next 3 years. This was a summit which mainly reiterated a general deal made in June, but stepped back on a number of important areas. Uncertainty as to what exactly has been agreed remains, Taoiseach, no matter what you and your press operation say and spin. When the new system will come into operation and what the benefit to Ireland will be is unknown. Amazingly, what is also unknown is exactly what Ireland is asking for. It is time, Taoiseach, I would suggest, to put aside the generalities and the constant over-claiming of every development. Now that we have a consistent story from the government on the unique circumstances which mean Ireland should be helped, they need to state clearly what they're looking for. What is the sustainable level of debt, and what European assistance are we looking for?
Thank you.